Guys.
All right, so then I'm going to let everyone in if everyone is ready.
And you have the bells turned off, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, I am hitting admit all and I'm going to mute my microphone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Chaikin. I'm the director of the Center for the Arts at New Jersey City University. And I'd like to welcome you tonight to our Arts and Culture Trust Fund public meeting. We're so glad that you're here with us. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Christine Goodman, who is the director of the City of Jersey City Office of Cultural Affairs.
Thanks, Stephanie. And thanks to NJCU too for hosting these meetings. It's a really great opportunity for us all to come together as a community to talk about this process. It's a new process. It's a new journey for all of us. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're taking a lot of opportunity for everyone who's involved with the arts and a stakeholder in the arts to know what to expect and to have the opportunity to ask questions and to contribute to the conversation. So we are going to start with a basic overview of where we are now. The few topics to really focus in on today are the committee structure and the review panel. And once we get through all of the content, and there's a lot to talk through, and I want to make sure that we are talking through absolutely everything so that you know all of the text in the ordinance as the draft stands now and what's been drafted for the review panel. And then at the end of the meeting is when we will open it up after we've gone through that for the discussion and questions. So if you can save your questions to the end, we will pull up the agenda now and jump in. We got a lot to cover tonight. Okay, so we're going to start with a recap. Just so everyone knows, I know there's probably some folks here who are joining us for the first time, probably might not have been at the last meeting. There is a timeline where we've attempted to sketch out this entire process for you to be able to refer back to, so you can follow where we are in the process and what we have ahead of us. That is a moving target because, you know, this is evolving as we go along. So we want to make sure that everybody here knows that that timeline can be accessed at jerseycityculture.org. And the timeline will be adjusted. We've added some FAQs, which was asked at the last meeting. We'll continue to add to that. And if there are other dates to add to the timeline, which I'll mention shortly, you'll find those there at jerseycityculture.org. So the update from the last meeting, the focus of the last meeting was around the percentage that we were going to put on the ordinance. I lost the agenda. Thanks. So the update for that is we are targeting the next council meeting, not tomorrow, but the one after that, for that ordinance to go up. That would be at the end of February. And we will keep you posted. And again, you can check back on the website to see where we are with that ordinance. And through this process, it also became clear that we were going to need to have an additional ordinance go in front of City Council that would outline the use and purpose of the trust fund grants and criteria. So that was not on our original timeline, and we will add that with a target for March. Probably late March for that to go onto City Council as an ordinance. So at our next public meeting, which will be early March here in this space, we will talk about that and that ordinance. So that's something that will be a change from what you saw last time. this additional piece of legislation. So now for the focus of tonight's discussion, we have the committee structure and the review panel structure. And I know there were some questions around what this looked like big picture at the last meeting. So I thought it would be great to give a review of the big picture process of how these grants will move forward through review and what we'd like to recommend and discuss. And that is essentially a 3-step process. So the grants would be submitted to a review panel, and those panelists would review the applications. Step 2 is the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee that would receive the recommendations from that review panel. And then step 3, the recommendations from the committee go in front of council, and that's sort of the big picture overview here. I wrote it out a little to talk through that process again, so we can all be clear about what we're talking about in terms of who does what and what these different steps are. So the review panelists will be split into groups and assigned an application category. Each group will review and score all applications in their category. Review panelists will present their scores and comments to the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. So the committee assesses those scores and will make funding recommendations with attention to diversity and equity across neighborhoods, arts disciplines, and other demographics. Grant recommendations will then be presented to City Council. So that's the 3-step process that we're talking about here. So this Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee is the first thing before us in terms of an ordinance to go in front of City Council. So tonight we discussed the ordinance, a draft of it, and how do we build this ordinance? So first, public discussion. The discussion like tonight or the previous discussion that we had with the arts community in January. And also used in this draft are existing city ordinances to form committees. The third piece are existing models for arts committees around the United States. And finally, law department review, because we want to make sure everything we do has been looked over by the law department so we can make sure that we're moving forward and able to execute everything that we've dreamed up here. So now I'd like to move to the draft of the ordinance. So Anna, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up. Great. So now we're going to dive into the ordinance itself. This is what will go eventually in front of City Council. This is 5 pages, so please bear with me. I'm going to kind of skim over certain parts because it's context and some of it just, this is how we write ordinances. But this is the ordinance establishing the Jersey City Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. Whereas arts and culture are important components of the city of Jersey City and are meaningful to its residents. And whereas artists, performers, and various artistic and culture institutions of the city enhance the public welfare by providing education, recreation, entertainment, and culture to the residents of the city. Whereas the city seeks to support, encourage, and foster public interest in the arts. Whereas the city seeks to increase access to arts education and arts programming for all residents while supporting professional arts programming of high artistic quality. Whereas this New Jersey statute authorizes a municipality to submit to their voters a proposition authorizing an annual levy to be deposited into an arts and culture trust fund. Whereas in November, we voted for this, and the amounts that are raised through this will be put into a fund, and where the city and their citizens value the important role arts and culture play in our community and understand the Arts and Culture Trust Fund will enhance the artistic and cultural development of the city. This is, therefore, we create this. It reviews the referendum at this point, which is the maximum that we voted on, which is 2 cents per $100 of municipal assessed real estate property. And the purpose of the levy. So this comes directly, again, from the state language. Deposited into an arts and culture trust fund to be created by the municipality and shall be used exclusively for arts and culture. Except that the municipality may deposit such amounts into the current fund of that municipality for uses not related to arts and culture if the director of the Division of Local Government Services in the Department of Community Affairs finds that the municipality is in fiscal distress. Again, that comes directly from the referendum, and the director of Division of Local Government Services, that is a state role. The Department of Community Affairs is a state agency, and so they would be the ones directing that, and that is part of their language that they added. B, any interest or other income earned on monies deposited into the Arts and Culture Trust Fund shall be credited to the fund to be used for the same purposes. The city may deposit other funds into the Arts and Culture Trust Fund as it may from time to time deem appropriate. Okay, so the city hereby establishes the Arts and Culture Trust Fund and severability. If any provision of the ordinance or application thereof to any person or circumstance is judged invalid. This is legal language around this for severability. Okay, we can scroll down a little bit. So Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. Now we're actually getting into the meat of what we're talking about here tonight. So this is the membership of the committee. The committee shall consist of 7 voting members appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of council. Additionally, at least 1 city staff member shall serve as a non-voting member of the committee. At least 1 non-voting member of the committee shall be present at every committee meeting. The membership of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee shall consist of the following: the mayor or his or her designee, 6 residents of Jersey City representing each ward, A to F, 1 non-voting council member, 1 non-voting city staff member who shall be the Director of Cultural Affairs or his or her designee. The Jersey City Arts Council may collaborate on nominations and recommendations. Committee members representing each ward, A to F, may be nominated by the public. Members should reflect the diversity of Jersey City. Nominees must be Jersey City residents and have 1 or more of the following: A, appreciation for the arts, B, professional expertise in an arts field, C, service to the public, and D, understanding of the Jersey City population and landscape. All members shall serve for a term of 2 years from the effective date of this ordinance in staggered terms for no more than 2 consecutive terms. A former member may be nominated 2 years after their last consecutive term. In order to establish staggered terms, the mayor, with advice and consent of the council, shall appoint 4 members initially selected to a term of 1 year, and 5 members initially selected to a term of 2 years. After the initial terms, members appointed to the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee shall serve 2-year terms. That is to establish staggered terms so everybody doesn't come off and on at the same time. A nominee shall not be eligible for membership on this committee if they are currently serving on the board of a Jersey City-based arts organization, or if they are a current paid staff member of a Jersey City-based arts organization. If any conflicts of interest arise, Members shall affirm to recuse themselves from any consideration or discussion of an applicant or application during their tenure. Members shall abide by the Jersey City Code, Chapter 33, Ethics. All members of the committee listed above may be removed by the majority of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee with the consent of Municipal Council. Vacancies shall be filled for the duration of the term in the same manner as the original appointment. The chairperson and a recording secretary shall be designated by a majority vote of the committee, and they both shall be voting members of the committee. Meetings. The committee will meet at least 4 times a year to be established by the chairperson. There can also be special meetings. The committee shall obtain its legal counsel from the Jersey City Law Department. 10 days prior to a committee meeting, the relevant city departments shall provide the committee with all documents to be reviewed for the upcoming meeting. All meetings shall be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, and all meeting minutes shall be made available to the public. C, responsibilities. The Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee shall be responsible for distribution of the Jersey City Arts and Culture Trust Fund monies to support creative and cultural activities, included but not limited to performing, visual and fine arts, music, dance, graphic design, film, digital media and video, architecture and urban design, humanities, literature, arts and culture education, historic preservation, museum curation, crafts, and folk arts. That is taken from the referendum itself. The Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee has the duty to review, prioritize, and evaluate projects and applications for funding from the Arts and Culture Trust Fund. The committee shall decide approval or denial of applications and distribution of funding from the Arts and Culture Trust Fund. The committee shall decide on panelists for the grant review panel based on nominations submitted by the public. The committee shall draft a final report at the close of the granting cycle regarding all approved or denied applications, evaluation applications, and distribution of funds to the applicants and any other information the committee may deem appropriate. The committee is empowered to solicit input from residents regarding the future of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund, and it shall provide the council and all other city entities with its findings and recommendations as it deems appropriate. Grantees must meet the goals and objectives determined by the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee for funding through the Arts and Culture Trust Fund. Compensation of members. Members of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee shall serve without compensation. Committee policy and procedures. Within 60 days of the passage of this ordinance, the committee shall propose written policies, procedures, and best practices governing its operations under this section, including code of ethics, conflicts of interest, grant application procedures, and evaluation standards. The aforementioned policies and procedures shall be voted on during the first meeting of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. Proposed policies and procedures shall pass with the majority of the committee votes and a quorum present. And these are final, legal comments here regarding changes, that we keep them underscored, new materials underscored, material that's omitted is struck through in an ordinance once it is actually voted on. And that is the end of the ordinance. Okay, so now we're going to go through the last section, which is the review panel. And then we will circle back for conversation around these entire pieces. And I'm sure we'll need to bring up other sections that I've already read. So the review panel, which is the first review step in this process, and if you wouldn't mind bringing up that slide, can be nominated. You can be self-nominated. You can be nominated by a member of City Council or an organization. I don't see it yet, Anna. That is actually the agenda. So while Anna looks for that, I'll get started. Okay, great. Thank you. So this is a draft of what that panelist review form would look like, and an outline of the role of the review panel. The Jersey City Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee appoints panelists to evaluate and rate applications made to the fund. Nominees should have 2 or more of the following: artistic and programming merit, specialized art experience, arts management experience, and service to the public. Nominated from the public, they can be nominated from the public arts organization, city council, city staff, and self-nominations. The panelist responsibilities are to attend a panel training, to commit to, this is an approximation because this is our first time through this, but we're saying about 10 hours between the training, the time to review all applications, and then the panel meeting at the end. They read all applications and complete objective evaluation of each. They attend a panel review, and the review panel is refreshed once every granting cycle. They are paid an honorarium for the work that they do. And as part of nominating to serve on the review panel, you would select your program focus here. And then if you could scroll down. And then this is where you would attach your bio resume, relevant experience and qualifications, and describe why you would want to serve on the panel. And who can serve as a panelist? Experienced professionals in the field of arts and culture. Panelists should have experience in the arts, arts administration, or community programming. Values: a commitment to creating a panel that reflects the diversity of Jersey City and a fair and impartial panel. Panel qualifications: may not be serving on a Jersey City-based nonprofit arts board or be a staff member of a Jersey City-based arts organization that is applying for an Arts and Culture Trust Fund grant during this grant cycle. Panel process: panelists will attend the training. So this is a review of what I mentioned above. They'll attend a training. They make the grant recommendations. They're assigned an application category, and those are the packets that they specifically review for their category. Along with, they're also given the handbook and the criteria, the scoring rubric. Panelists will review and evaluate each application, their application category. They'll meet to deliberate and decide on funding recommendations. The panelists will present to the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee, who will decide on what levels of funding based on panel recommendations. And the peer review panels are refreshed annually. Okay, so that covers the review panel and the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. We can back out of this document. And now we have, okay. So now we can open it up for discussion here, and I can start diving into some of the questions. I have the Jersey City Arts Council here as well, Councilwoman Mira Prinzeri and Vernon Richardson from the Mayor's Office. I do see a question about institutions and individuals. So Deep Space, it's a great question you put out here. So if we go back to the timeline, which you can review on Jersey City Culture, I don't have a slide for that, but the next meeting is when we dive into categories and priorities. So this is about creating the committee. So that will be, that's the next step in the process. Okay, so the ordinance, once it is, so this is a draft that we're looking at now, and the ordinance will be made public. It's a matter of public record, but we'll be sure to post what is going to be going in front of City Council on Jersey City Culture, so that you can see that and you can review the document.
We have a hand raised from Caitlin. I'm going to unmute you, Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, hi, Christine. So I really appreciate the kind of rigor that you described in order for somebody to get on the review panel. It seems like it's hard to get on the review panel, but I'd like to hear more about getting on the committee that oversees it. And I want to just register a concern, like, I don't love hearing that all of the members are going to be appointed by the mayor. I don't really understand like why that's the thing, except, you know, because it's nice to be able to pick people. But yeah, it seems like it's easy to get on the committee, but hard to get on the review panel. And I just would love to hear more about how those committee members are going to get on there. And I think that Caitlin Overton asked a similar question in the chat. So I don't know, is that question clear enough?
Sure. So absolutely, absolutely. So when we go back to what the ordinance is created from, the guide that we use are existing formats that we use for creating committees within city government that, you know, council would chime in for other committees that would use this basic format. Shade Tree Committee, the Open Space Trust Fund Committee, but I'll let you chime in, but you know, more to your point, the mayor, with the advice and consent of council. So it's a two-step process. And then the third step, or the third piece of this in the ordinance, is that the Jersey City Arts Council can participate in this process as well. Now, in addition to this, anybody can be suggested or their names can be put forth.
Yep, so just, I'll jump in just very quickly. This language is very standard for almost all boards and commissions across the city as to how they are put together. So the key here though is with advice and consent of council. So for example, I have a conversation with the mayor. I say, these are great nominees for the Ward B representative, and he picks somebody that I don't think is the right choice. I can say, no, go back and bring us somebody else. So that's the check and balance, or one of the checks and balances there. But just going back to Christine's point, that's standard language for almost all boards and commissions.
So we do also think it's important to share the draft of the ordinance as well. You know, this is a working draft for discussion. I don't know if I could. We will definitely make sure that before anything goes in front of council, everybody can kind of see the elements of that as well. Let me see, looking through the other comments.
Christine,
oh,
sorry. I think I can just.
Yeah, can you drop it? Could you have, Heather, you have a copy of it? Can we tag it into the chats?
Do I have a copy? I don't have a copy of the ordinance. I was just going to answer this question about appreciation for the arts qualifies someone to judge. I think the structure, the idea is that the review panelists first are arts experts in that field. So if it's a dance application, the person who would be scoring, or the panel that would be scoring the dance, applications will have dance specific expertise and will have arts expertise in those areas, and that the committee also, when we say appreciation for the arts, has some relationship to the arts, but more important for the committee is to understand the Jersey City landscape and understand how these programs that have been scored from the panel will fit into the community. Do these make sense here? Does this look like something that this community needs? So the review panel is more arts specific expertise, and the committee is more community expertise, if that helps.
Okay, we have a hand up from Miss Mariah. I'm going to ask you to unmute now.
Hi guys, sorry, it says Miss Mariah because I teach from this Zoom. It's just Mariah. Hi guys. Just in regards to, I know you guys mentioned the diversity and having it reflect, having the members of these boards reflect the diversity of Jersey City. As a person that has been in the art scene from back in the day and kind of on that side of Jersey City, I know for a fact that a lot of this news and a lot of these resources do not reach back to Ward F. So is there like a certain, and other wards in our area, so like the Montgomery West Side, sometimes even things that take place in Ward F do not reach like the general population. So how are we going to make sure, is there like a person from each ward going to be appointed as far as like to be a member of the board, or just like diversity in like a general sense? Because I know that me as an artist, I've been lucky enough to have access to all of this and to understand it through my friends. But as a lifelong born and raised Jersey City person, I can say that there are things that I know about that nobody that I know that are born and raised in Jersey City know about this stuff. Like this is like whole different world for us. Like this is a different Jersey City for us.
I thought you were going to say something, Heather. So
No.
there is one member representing each ward on the committee.
And can I add too that I think because we talked about it a little bit just from my own memory, the reason it wasn't specifically stated that that person had to live in the ward the entire time is because people move in the city. And so the idea was at their appointment, they live in this, they will continue to represent that ward for the duration of their term. But just because people move, we didn't want to have to kick someone off a board just because they moved during their term. That's all.
Okay, our next hand up is from Sam Pott. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Sam.
Just 1 second, Sam. I just want to add that, Anna, I think you're going to be sharing.
Yes, I'm working on that. I will be putting the ordinance file in the chat for all of you before the end of this event.
As long as everyone knows this is a draft, it's a working document. So this will likely reflect changes from our discussion tonight. But I think it's a good point that people should be able to follow it. Okay, sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And thanks for fielding all these questions and clarifications. I had two questions. One is just wanted to make sure that I'm kind of grasping this correct in terms of the flow of applications here. So the review panel, it sounds like members of that panel will indicate an area or an arts discipline that's kind of their expertise. So there might be somebody who is an expert in painting, and there might be somebody who's an expert in film on this panel. Is the idea that those specialists would be the kind of the sole evaluator for applications that are submitted? So for example, if a filmmaker submits an application for funding, would their application only be evaluated by the film specialist, or would the film specialist's evaluation have greater weight in the process, or how did, or has that been kind of thought through in the review process? That's one question, and then I have a second follow-up, but maybe easier just to, if you can field that one, and then I'll quickly pose the second one.
That's open for discussion. The idea for having panelists with arts expertise is that they would come to the review table having that individual knowledge to be able to lend to the discussion and to be able to have those professional evaluations so that they know what they're looking for.
Got it. So the panel would attempt to kind of have a broad cross section of people with kind of expertise and background in a various different disciplines. Okay.
Let me just, before you get to your second part, Sam, I think the application wouldn't be reviewed by everyone on the panel. Yeah, there would be a few people in that area. And to touch on Elizabeth's kind of follow-up, what about multidisciplinary applicants? I think whatever the app, so if you're proposing a choreography program, or if you're, it depends on what it is that your application is. If it's operational, then it's kind of like, what is, you know, the heart of your organization? Is it a theater organization? Then it goes before people who have a background in that area.
Gotcha. But the panel itself would have a total of how many members?
That I think is to be decided.
The review panel would depend on how many applications are coming in. I mean, I think, you know, next year, it'll be way easier to be able to, you know, prepare for that. Yeah. Ideally, we have 3 panelists per category.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a pretty large overall panel. Got it. Yeah.
So can we guarantee, based on those numbers, that every single person who's reviewing in a specific category will have an expertise in that category? I would say the reality is probably not, but to have that arts professional background and expertise will still work into the conversation.
Got it. Thank you. And then my other question is, once the application has gotten through the review panel and then it gets to the trust fund committee to kind of review the evaluation that the review panel has made, how much discretion would the Arts Fund Committee then have to assess the amount of funding? Would they be, you know, required to kind of more or less tie their funding allocation to the evaluation by the grant panel, or would they have the ability to just kind of, you know, drastically override what the panel had recommended? Or has that, you know, maybe that's up for discussion as well?
Well, the Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee is an open meeting. And so everybody is, you know, welcome to see that process unfold. I think that anybody who's serving on a committee will want to have all of the information and the objective review, and have had this public conversations like this brought to the goal line. So when they sit down to have these discussions and make these decisions, they're not making them in a vacuum, that they have all of this work behind them as support to make an informed decision. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I think if you look at the larger picture of this committee's function, you know, you're going to want to provide as much background and as many tools as possible for them to move forward. And that is where the review panel and the work of the review panel becomes essential and is a really important piece of this. There was a question here, well, who decided on the 3-tier system? This is a system that's actually in place and used quite frequently. I think, you know, it's important when we are starting this new process to look at other examples across the country and here locally in our own state where tax dollars are granted out to the arts. And similar structures exist, and this is a somewhat of a standard approach to have a review panel that's going through the applications and making recommendations to a committee. I see concerns about individual artists not being directly mentioned, and I think, I'll, comment on that now, that nobody is really directly referenced in terms of who's getting what kind of funding at this point. So when you go to review categories and grant process, that's where you break out into, the for-profit, nonprofit, individual, arts education, whatever those buckets are, individual artists are one of those.
There was another question about individual artists serving on the different panels and committees and whether that would disqualify them from applying. And I believe the answer to that is it would, because that would fall under the code of ethics that we would have to abide by, that the panel and the board would have to abide by. So you not only could not directly apply, but you could not be connected with an organization or business that is applying as well.
There was a question in chat that popped up during the conversation with Sam, and it says, Sam's question relates to my previous question from chat. How will multidisciplinary applicants be treated then? Do you have to pick a primary discipline for the project? That's kind of what I heard.
So I will go to my having served on grant panels hat for this. I know it's really hard to put ourselves in a category sometimes as artists. I know there are truly multidisciplinary artists and organizations in the city. So the rule of thumb is really to try and put yourself in a category if there's a primary focus or a primary driver to your art. And then there is also an other category. And if there is enough people who self-define as multidisciplinary, then that category would be created. It kind of depends on how many people are applying in that particular and saying that they are multidisciplinary or other, but it is a good point. I'll make a note for multidisciplinary artists. Maybe we just start with a evaluation category from the get-go.
Okay, our next hand up is from Linda. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Linda.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Linda DeGeese. I'm a published poet. I published my first poetry chapbook. In fact, I have a copy right here. It's called Poetry of Emotions and Motions. It's still available on Amazon for purchase. I'm an active member of the JC Writers. I've been a member since 2014. And I've been an active member, and right now I'm currently working on a play. So my main concern is, well, overall, I have a big love for the arts. One of the things I'd like to do in the future is to be on a literary committee, or to find out when the meetings will be open to the public to attend one.
Hey, Linda, I think that you're talking about the Arts Council Committee. So I put my email in the chat, and you can email me about that, because that's Arts Council specific. And today we're talking about the Arts Trust. If you could share your email in the chat, I'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
I saw a question here about, do review panelists have to live in Jersey City as well? No. We will need a lot of review panelists, and the expertise, the review panels are the ones who are evaluating based on professional expertise in the arts.
Okay, our next hand up is from Eric Nadler. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I had, I guess, a question about sort of the broader strokes looks at what sort of the mission of this, well, this fund and that this committee is going to be overseeing. So, I mean, this covers so much ground. I mean, for example, there's arts education versus arts exhibition versus like artist residencies. There's education, even within education, there could be perhaps funding provided for arts education that is specifically for artists, but then also arts education for the general public as well. Is there sort of a first step that's going to happen in terms of like the broad strokes? Like our mission is to really like spend 30% of our efforts on education and 60% on exhibition and like 20% on education for artists, and then like individual artist grants, some percentage. I mean, where is that sort of like broad strokes or like overall determination going to be made, and by whom, and at what point in the process, I guess?
Sure. So jerseycityculture.org, that has the timeline. The timeline breaks into pieces what we're discussing at each step along this process. And the categories and the way we start to look at that will be at the next meeting. That will be in March. So the goal here is for us to discuss these categories. I'm sorry, for us to discuss the committee. And then as we dive into these categories and the big picture goals of the Arts Fund, the priorities, the way that division looks, Eric, we then, you know, after our community discussion, we'll present that to the committee and bring that to this formed committee and say, here are the recommendations, and these conversations have happened. We've had these conversations with the arts community, and we're certainly happy to have other breakout group discussions too around this, because there's a lot of content to get through. And so that when the committee, you know, arrives to start the work, there are these recommendations in place. So that's the long answer. The short answer is we'll really drill down to that in the next meeting.
Okay, but I guess my question really isn't around is around sort of like, once this committee is selected, I mean, it's great that the first priority is to sort of like create something that is diverse and where there's voices from each of the wards. But within each ward, perhaps there's somebody chosen for, you know, in Ward C that is like education oriented, and another person in Ward F that is like an individual artist or an arts administrator or something like that. And it just, I guess I'm curious as to sort of like where the overall direction is kind of going to come from, and how that's going to get shaped. And it seems like to establish a committee first is going to like sort of dictate a certain direction, or as opposed to sort of hearing voices from the community or hearing voices from a broader group, specialized group, let's say, or a series of specialized groups that might put forth proposals for various sort of like categories of things that might happen in education, in exhibition, and so forth. And then if a committee is then established after that, it would be probably a more useful thing. See what I'm saying? Like what we're doing has to be determined before we say like, these are going to be the people in charge of it. It wouldn't make sense to me anyway.
Well, I would definitely put forward recommendations for people for that committee that you feel would add value, particularly in those wards.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Why the committee first? Well, it's part of the process for leading this forward, so that there is an actual, you know, formal body of leaders around this as well, and that we can do this work and bring that to the committee. So that it's kind of happening simultaneously.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
So there's a lot to cover here. Heather and Sam, what are your time? What's your time as well? For you had wanted to present something to.
To discuss the grant, our upcoming grant.
Yeah.
You're on
Okay.
mute, Heather.
So everyone, let's see, I'm going to put my email here because I want to make sure that we are addressing everything. So anything that we don't get to, feel free to. And you have the Arts Council's email. Councilwoman, if you want to add your email, Vernon.
Hey, I just want to touch on this one question before we leave it about just the committee pick the review panelists. So, you know, like Christine keeps saying, it is a huge thing that we're building, and we're looking, the Arts Council's doing research, the city's doing research, and we're kind of putting that all together. And so to Eric's point, it's like, you know, chicken or the egg as far as like which piece do we do first. So in our meetings, we are kind of discussing, okay, well, if we do this, it will lead to that, and trying to piece it together. So this question about the review, will the review panelists be chosen by the committee members? That is the idea at this point, because if the Arts Council is applying for funds, then obviously we should not be choosing the panelists. So until we sort out how the Arts Council participates in the fund, we can be clearer about whether or not we could possibly oversee choosing the review panelists. So that I just want to let you know that is on our radar, and it's not something that we're brushing off, but it's kind of about us choosing the next piece. So I hope that helps.
There's also a question about, will there be a template or parameters for the applications? Absolutely. Absolutely. We want everybody to be aware of, you know, what this application is going to look like, what the priorities are, what the focus of, you know, the goals of the trust fund grant are. And we also look to the arts community to get the word out as well to other people who might not be in this meeting.
I do know there's still a couple of hands up for people who've not had the opportunity to ask a question yet. So, Anne, I don't know if you want to go through the list and call on them, just because I know we're coming close to 8 o'clock. And some of these guys have been very patient, waiting to have their questions answered.
Sabrina can call in.
Okay, I'm
People
gonna
that have their
ask
hands up.
Ashley to unmute now.
Okay, hello, hi. I am a new resident to Jersey City. So, you know, I'm here trying to do the thing with Jersey City Theater Center, working with this theater company. And I had a question about, this is my first meeting to attend to, so I'm, you know, sorry if it's a repetitive question. So I wanted to follow up on what Mariah was asking in terms of creating like a equitable environment when you're choosing the panels. So like, you have the committee together and you're trying to get people from different wards that represent the diversity of Jersey City, but which I think is great. And I like that you're saying you're going to have people from different wards, from each ward representing, but I'm still interested in how that process is happening with the people you're choosing to make sure it's an equitable, like racially equitable, you know, economically equitable, so that all different people are being represented. And then also when it comes to choosing the applications for the grants, are there certain rules set in place as well, so that while they're choosing it, you don't have like an overwhelming same, you know, type of people, same type of stories and all those things, but make sure all the different stories and all the different colorful things about Jersey City are being represented, the different organizations that are here, what rules are being, if there are rules being set in place so that that doesn't happen.
That's the hope too, in having the two-step process as well, because you have your review panel that's coming at it with one hat on or from a specific angle, and then having that conversation between the review panelists and the committee adds another layer, right? So the committee members, we really want to make sure that they are representative of the entire city and that they are able to put their community hat on. I'm a resident of Jersey City. I know my neighborhood. I know what's lacking in my neighborhood. I know it can best serve my neighborhood. And I'm looking at and hearing from the review panel with that, through that lens too, so that there can be two layers of conversation to make sure that we are hitting all the points. And to your comment on the committee, you know, through the language on the ordinance, the Jersey City Arts Council can participate in this process for the committee members. So I would say that if you have an idea of somebody who might be a good person to serve on the committee, you could send that to the Jersey City Arts Council. Does that sound okay, Heather, to get the conversation going?
Yeah, and we may even, we just have to sort that out, but maybe we will have a form where you can nominate people that we can, you know, then look at and make our recommendations to the mayor and work closely on that. And I also want to just touch on, I know there's some equity questions. You know, that is something that the Arts Council is super committed to, and in every piece of this process, to whatever extent we can, we are looking at like, what is the outcome of all of these things? So Mariah and a couple other folks in the chat, we definitely hear your point on that. Our definition of equity is not the same as equality. So to Robinson's question, does equity mean every ward gets the same amount? That's not quite how we see equity. I think equity is a way of helping create a level playing field. So those communities that have had less access, we are hoping will have more access until we find that we do actually have equal representation and equal arts access across the city. That's our goal. I just wanted to comment on that. Thanks.
So I want to say that we're at 8 o'clock, but we're going to go long because this is a really important conversation. So we want to hear your questions. So don't stress. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, I'll take this we have a few raised hands that I think we should go to too. I don't have the number. We'll get that for you, but the number in terms of how much is going to be generated, this is going on the next council meeting. So, you know, things being what they are with, you know, COVID and people working everywhere, just trying to get stuff done is, you know, that's why it's going on the next council meeting and not the last one. So that will come up at the next council meeting. So you'll have the numbers that will be generated. You know, that'll be a point of discussion at the next council meeting. And if I find it out beforehand, I will definitely post it here. So great question, Kat.
Okay, our next hand up is from Bess Morrison. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hey, it's a very simple question. And maybe this hasn't been thought about yet, but when you're looking for proposals, are you looking for very specific, okay, I want to do this project and my grant's going to be specifically for this? Or can it be that this large company wants to do more education in the schools? How, so especially with companies, are you looking for more a general grant towards education, or is this really going to go to fund very specific projects in specific wards? And it works for individuals as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that moves into the next big undertaking, which will be our next discussion at the next meeting. Yeah, categories.
Right. I jumped ahead. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. There's a lot to cover. And I know that we know that's an important piece of this conversation. And, you know, because this is such a big conversation and we want to conduct it in a manner that allows for us to have these kind of discussions because they are so crucial to the evolution of the Arts and Culture Trust Fund, that it does mean that we want to, you know, kind of cover everything at once, and we're piecing it out like this to have very directed conversations along the way. So to the point that was made in the chat, we will make sure the next meeting's 90 minutes. Right, that would be the question being program funding, operational funding, individual funding, all of that, yeah.
I can
Okay,
just
our-
say also briefly, Bess, on that, it's been recommended to us from the people that we're consulting who have had extensive experience in grants, that the first time around, we want to make this as open as possible. So however we feel like we can have parameters, but allow for all things. And then when we see this first year of applications, we will have a better idea of what kinds of things people are doing. So to whatever extent we can be open to all different kinds of proposals, we will.
Yeah, just the goal is not to create a structure that people have to work for, but to create a structure that is open enough that brings in as many applications across the board as possible.
Okay, our next hand up is from Elizabeth. I'm going to ask you to unmute now.
Hi, so I've been rather active in the chat. I was just typing another question, so I'll ask that first. It's very brief, that question, and then I'll say my main comment, which I was wondering if there are specific target numbers for applications so that we know that we've done a good enough job getting enough, or like what kind of data is going to be collected. But before anyone answers that, I want to say the main thing that I signed on to say, which might be jumping the gun, but might not. I wanted to say it at the first meeting, which is just that so many sources of government funding specifically censor adult content when it's for the community. And that usually in practice means censoring queer and women's bodies or sexuality. So my priority would be that there's a diversity of content, which Ashley Nicole touched on, but also just to make sure that this money doesn't come with a price tag of censorship, which a lot of government arts money does. And that's my comment. Thank you so much.
All right, our next hand up is from Barbara Williams. I'm going to ask you to unmute now, Barbara.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Williams, and volunteer member of the Community Awareness Series, and also a member of the African Cultural Arts Family Festival. We put on a yearly event. Hi, Brian. We don't see in the language things that talk about festival activity, which encompasses a broad umbrella of cultural presentation, and hoping that that will be incorporated. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk to, and it's not exactly a question, but in terms of the outreach that will happen in all of the wards, I think that going forward, once off the ground, that there should be some sort of town hall meeting per ward, so community artists and even not so much professional, but community folk can be able to get their information. So first time or whatever, even if it's about how to go about the process to be seriously considered, because they'll be going up against maybe a lot of professional artists and people, and so they'll just need that background 101 about the process, how it happens, how it should be applied for, that kind of thing, because I really don't want to see those arts that have been going on in Jersey City forever being like looked over because they're not professional enough to stand up against some of the quote experienced and published artists that we see here right now. And Community Awareness Series has been doing arts and culture for forever under Dawood Williams. So I just want to say that there really has to be that push for outreach into the wards. There really does. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barbara, and thank you for your comments. When we announce the applications, hopefully you can help us host those meetings as well.
Oh, we would be very happy to, help with the, town hall type things. And I just another comment just to make, it's very hard to think that you put the guideline of that an artist or a council member, arts council member can't be affiliated with some group, because I think that that's kind of impossible. Every artist is affiliated with something. I just want to say that's, like it'll be just undercover, but everybody has some arts organization, group, or something that they have a close kinship with. So I'm just putting that out there for food for thought.
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot to unpack in the comments. So I guess in big picture, we have the need to go into the communities all across the city to be able to talk about this opportunity. And as part of that next ordinance, we need to talk about some of the bigger priorities here for the Arts and Culture Trust Fund, namely being to build access to the arts and to build arts participation across the entire city. And that's going to be a team effort. And that is not only going to depend on having public meetings and everybody, all 61 people here telling their friends. That also means that our established organizations can also be thinking about how to partner in new creative ways to build programming too. I absolutely agree with you that education and the tools to be successful are a key part of this. And the Office of Cultural Affairs is happy to host grant writing sessions. We did a whole series with NJCU and with the Arts Council and Rising Tide Capital around all aspects of arts organization management. But we can certainly this year roll out grant writing. I know next week, I'm sure you want to talk about it, Stephanie, but you have
next week, same time, same Zoom link, we are going to have a professional development program about fiscal sponsorship. And our guest is going to be, just forgot the name, Christine
from Fractured Atlas.
Thank you very much. It's right out of my head. Fractured Atlas will have a representative to talk to us about fiscal sponsorship.
Yeah. And also there was, comments about grant writing expertise and feedback on applications. And, that is certainly a very important part of this conversation too, so that people can be successful in and have that those tools and that kind of dialogue to be able to get arts funding and to be successful in it.
Sorry, to the kind of take that first step in educating and helping walk people through. Mira, could you share a link where people will find the ordinances listed for the city council meetings? So just to be clear, those are shared publicly before city council votes on them. How do people go about finding that?
The agendas are published on the city website in advance of the meeting. I would put the link in right now, but unfortunately the city website is down. And so it's redirecting me to a page that says you cannot access it, because I don't want to send you guys to the main page. I want to send you guys to the clerk's page. So that is the best way to see. Usually the agendas are published the Thursday before the meeting. So for example, we have a council meeting tomorrow night. The agenda, if the website had been up and running, would have been published on the website on Thursday. But once I get that, what I'll do is Stephanie, I can't see that. Can you text it to me? Is it up? Is it back up? Aha, okay, hold on, everybody, stand by. Yay!
Thank you.
Give me 1 second and I'll go get that right now.
And we'll also post it on the Cultural Affairs website too. And I did just ask Anna to share the panelist nomination form that we talked through as well. And that will also go up on our website tomorrow.
This meeting is recorded also, so you can pass it around to people to listen again.
So I also, Barbara had a comment too about, back to the conflicts of interest. I don't think so for the ordinance, the conflicts of interest were written for, you cannot be serving on a board or be an employee of an arts organization to be on the committee. For the review panel, let me read this. May not be serving on a nonprofit arts board or be a staff member of a Jersey City-based arts organization. So friends of artists and associated with artists are different. The way this is written is for direct stakeholders.
All right, that nomination panel form is link to that is coming right up.
And to Deep Space's comment, yes, we will certainly share as much as we can in advance. Quite honestly, this is an evolving process, and we got them, we got the documents from the law department right before this meeting. So we'll try and post things as quickly as we can, and so that everybody can refer back to them. But now you have everything in the chat. The councilwoman posted where ordinances are accessible through the City of Jersey City's website. And we'll also post to the Cultural Affairs site. The other side of it, creating things from scratch and also having this really ambitious timeline is that there's a lot happening, and we want to give you as much advance notice. So thank you. And we do appreciate you bearing with us while we walk through the documents in real time. I know it's not ideal for everyone. And we also invite you to follow up with emails as well for anything that wasn't covered here.
So Heather, did you want to talk about grant opportunities?
Mac Adams gonna take that.
Okay, McAdam.
Oh, yeah, happy to. And Sam from Nimbus, yours is coming up first, so I don't know if you want to announce yours first. But we're working with Nimbus on a couple of grants we're very excited about.
Yeah, just to make this short and sweet, some good news for Jersey City. Nimbus and Jersey Arts Council partnered on a grant application to the New Jersey Arts and Culture Recovery Fund and was awarded grants which will be distributed by Nimbus and by Jersey City Arts Council. Much smaller scale than what we're talking about in tonight's conversation, but hopefully helpful for artists nonetheless. Nimbus will be making grants available to dance artists and choreographers, along with a package of space, studio space, performance, presentation, and career development through these funds. And then I believe Jersey City Arts Council will be announcing the ways that they'll be distributing a portion of the funds in the coming weeks. I'm going to put in the chat the link for the application process for the funds that Nimbus is going to be distributing on the dance side. And so feel free to check it out.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have a little more info about what the Arts Council is doing in a week or two. We just need to wait for the funds to come in before we start handing out funds. But they will be similar to what we did over the summer with the COVID emergency relief grants. This will be another emergency relief grants to individual artists impacted by COVID in some regard. So hopefully we'll have a little more information and that will go out, but that is specifically to reach people that have been hurt, communities that have been hurt by this, impacted even more greatly by this, by the COVID pandemic. So hopefully we'll be able to officially announce that and share the application either next week or in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming this evening and participating, and keep the feedback coming to us. And thank you to Anna Carhart and Sabrina Saballo. Please join us next week to learn about fiscal sponsorship. And Vernon and Mira, thank you so much. And Christine, turn it to you to close the evening.
Me?
It's you.
Tired of my voice at this point. No, thanks for joining us tonight. I know everybody's got a lot of Zoom burnout at this point. And, I know some people are like, not another Zoom meeting, but I do think, putting in the 90 minutes next time, and also please send your emails and we'll continue the conversation, will help us get to where we want to go and stay on track for our goals for 2021. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, NGCU, for hosting these discussions.
All right, have a great night, everyone. We're going to leave the chat open for another 5 minutes, so anyone who didn't get the links can copy them down.